and happy Tuesday. I hope most of you are enjoying some fall weather. We are on episode 67, if you can believe it. Today we're going to talk about automating your workflow. But before we get started, just a reminder that we welcome questions. So feel free to ask questions in the question feature somewhere on your screen. Sometimes it's to the left or right, sometimes it's at top. We will try to get through as many questions as we can. If we are not able to answer your question or don't have time, we can reach out offline. We also will be sending a recap of today's episode later this week in an email with a link to it if you want to watch it again or listen, or if you want to use it internally at your office, please feel free. And with that, I'm just going to go ahead and introduce Brandy Dutil, a wonderful SoftPro peer of ours. She is going to get started and go through automating your workflow.
Hi guys. For those of you who don't know me or haven't worked with me before, I'm Brandy Dutil. I have been with SoftPro 14-ish years or so. I started in training and I am now sort of made my way through implementation, and I'm currently the configuration team lead. So we're the people behind the scenes that build out things like automation, formulas, custom rules, things like that. So today we're going to talk about automation, automating your workflow. And to us, your workflow means how you process your orders and how automation can help you with that. And to do that, we need to start talking about what automation is and what is possible with automation. So what is going on with there we go. Oh, no, it jumped. Hold, please. There we go. So what is automation? That is a big, big question. So if you just break it down simply, because I get asked a lot, what is automation and what can it do? Well, there's no simple answer to that, because if you think about it this way, automation is treated by Select as a user. And automation is only available to Select if you're a Select user. But because automation is treated as a user to the system, if a user can do it in an order to an extent, because there are limitations, then ideally or technically, automation could be programmed to do it. So think about that. That opens it up for a lot of possibilities. So really, the sky is potentially the limit. So through the setup of processes in SP admin, so you do have to have admin rights to set up these automation processes to tell it what to do. We'll use triggers or conditions. So we have to tell it what's going to happen in your order that tells this automation when to run. So what do I need to exist in the order to then trigger an action to perform or happen in an order without any additional intervention from the user. So for example, automation is going to mark a task as received maybe when the user attaches a document to an order. So think about this. Your user right now maybe is going in, attaching a doc. Maybe it's a commitment. They're marking the commitment status completed. They're filling out your fields on the commitment. And then they're going and marking the commitment task if you're using tasking as completed. Well, by virtue of doing one of those things, attaching the commitment, your user can then trigger an automation that completes the other two pieces of that workflow. So fill out the completed date of the commitment and fill out the task. So we can take your workflow process of that, complete commitment down from 3 things the user has to do to 1 thing the user has to do, and then automation comes behind them and completes the rest of that process. So we're making your users more efficient. So what are some of the things that are possible? Again, it is a pretty big, ball of wax, but outside of that, automation can apply templates. Just remember all of these things that automation can do, we have to tell it, and we have to be able to tell it when it needs to do these by virtue of putting something in the order so that it knows that it's the right time to perform these actions. So it can apply a template. It can update a specific field in the order, including retrieving entries from a lookup table. So it could fill out your status. It could pull in a specific contact from a contact lookup table. It could pull in a specific requirement or exception, something like that. Above and beyond that, as far as updating a field, it can actually add items to an order, which is something, let's say, if you're familiar with formulas, a formula can't do. So anywhere you see the plus sign in an order, like adding a contact, adding a requirement exception, adding a task, adding a note, adding any charges for your additional title charges screen, if we can tell it by other things being entered into the order that it's the right time to do those things because the other things have happened, automation can go hit that plus sign because it is a user and add those items to your order. Automation can also assign a trust account to your order. And then outside of order entry pieces, automation can be set up to run reports at a specific day and time and drop them in a shared folder on your network. And it can submit and accept certain 360 transactions, including triggering updates to SoftPro, I'm sorry, Closings Live. I haven't updated this slide clearly, including updating Closings Live or SoftPro Live. So those are the certain things that it can do outside an order. Everything else is an order. So now that we've talked about what it can do, which is huge, there are a few limitations. So before we look at how we do these things, automation is not going to email anything, okay? So when we talk about the reports piece, it can be set up to run a report for you at a certain day and time of every week or every month or whatever. It's not going to email it. It will put it in a shared folder. Now it can update a task status that can trigger an email via another one of our utilities called Task Notification Tool, but it will never send a direct email. That may come in the future, but it's not a thing yet. It cannot generate documents, but that is also future upcoming and hopefully sooner rather than later. It can't apply screen changes for you, which are my screens if you're familiar with those. And it cannot do, which means read from or write to anything in your register or in Pro Trust. It's not going to talk to your money. It's not going to touch your money. It's not going to read from your money. Now, I said on the previous slide that it can assign your trust account, and that's only because the trust account name is held in your order, but that's not touching your money. It's just initially assigning your trust account at the start of the order. So it will not read from or write to or even look at your register in your order or Pro Trust in any way. It also cannot automate workflow if you're using our standard SP admin workflow setup to do your tasks, as far as submit, assign, hitting the button, completing, etc. And it's not going to do anything with work lists if you're using our advanced queries, which are work lists. Okay, so that's kind of the bigger picture, what can it do and what it can't do. So let's go look at automation. So to access automation in Select, you do have to have access to SP admin. So in SP admin, under configuration, there are actually a couple of permissions that are tied to automation. And I'm going to just show you those very quickly because automation is built directly in SP admin. This is where you have to be to set up your processes, to tell it when to run, what orders to run on. But you can also, with permission, and you can give your users permission to monitor and see automations directly in their file to tell if an automation has run successfully in their orders directly. So just a very quick hit on permissions. It does have its own section under SP admin and automation. If you give users the permission to monitor automations, they will be able to see directly from their orders. They'll be able to click on this automations tab, and any automations that run in their orders, they'll just be able to see if they've completed successfully or not, and if they've failed, why they failed, or if they've completed manually or when they've completed. And then also there's a completed manually option that if you give your users permission to do that, if an automation fails, marking it as completed manually is just a way to say, hey, I know it failed, but the action it was trying to perform, I went ahead and I just did that manually. So it's really more notational. And then the ability to build processes is strictly an SP admin permission. So you'd have to have access to SP admin to touch that. So when we talk about automation, and again, deciding how to use that and when to use that, really what I tell people, because again, we get a lot of people that come and say, hey, what can it do? What should I use it for? Start with your, what do I want to do? Sky is the limit. I've said that before. What do I want it to do? Where in my workflow am I seeing, getting bogged down? Or where am I seeing where I could narrow down what my user's having to do, where they're having 4 things they have to do, where I could drill that down for them, where they could do one thing, and I know very definitively that automation can come behind them and do those other 3 to take some of the load off. Now, the other thing I want to mention when thinking about what should I have automation do for my user versus what should my user do is because automation is treated as a user in the system. Only one user can be in an order at a time. So think about that. If automation is treated as a user, any action that you're going to have automation perform when your user, your actual user, is in the system, they mark and they fill out the triggers, right? So automation recognizes, hey, they've attached this commitment document to my order. I recognize that that is a trigger for an automation, and I need to now go fill out a few fields, fill out a task, and update that. So what will happen is that by them triggering and activating the automation will recognize that the trigger has happened and it will fire off, but it will sit and wait for your user to exit the file before it can come in behind them and perform the action. So anything you're going to have automation do, it needs to make sense naturally that the action that automation is going to perform would happen naturally after your user does their piece and gets out of the file. Because automation will sit and wait. It's not going to time out. It's not going to, mess up, but it will say, hey, this happened. I'm just going to sit here and wait, but I won't run until they exit. You don't want to have your user, physically get out, wait for automation, and then jump back in to finish their job. So normally automation will be, hey, it makes sense for them to get out, and then automation can come just do the rest of it after they're out. Okay, so if we go to SP admin and configuration, if you have admin rights, we go to processes. This is where we will house all of our automation processes. And you might have some that are already built in. We do or have started a couple of years ago, once automation started getting big, adding in a couple of sample processes right off the bat, excuse me. Anything that's kind of light gray means it's here, but it's disabled. It's not actively running. Anything that's bold or dark blue is active, which means it's enabled, but it only runs if the file meets all of the criteria that we told it to look for. And it will always kind of show you a little bit of description or tell you what it's looking for, tell you who modified it and when. And you can always search this list by any of the pieces of information here. So to build out automations, there is actually a process wizard that will walk you through some of the sort of standard options to build these processes. So when we hit new process, it's sort of like an Outlook wizard, right? So it's your automation wizard, and it's when this happens, if these items exist or these options are matched, then perform this action. So as you walk through this wizard, it will start to evaluate all of this criteria and then perform the action. And your rule will start building out down below. As it builds, the little blue hyperlinks, if you click on them, will pop up and show you if you have other options. So your options to start off a process are when an order is saved, when a document is attached, when a specific date and time occurs. Now, specific date and time occurs is used primarily for running a report. You can't really use it with an order because then it does not really give you the options to go into an order. Order saved, document attached, task is added or update are the ones to update an order or 360 transaction. But specific date and time will be running a report. You do have the option to run it when a task is added or updated, and then 360 transaction is updated will trigger off of transactions that come into your 360 queue. And I'll show you a list where you can get a list of all of the ones that are available to work with automation towards the end, because not all 360 products are available via automation. So let's talk about the order ones real quick. The first thing I want to talk about is order is saved. So your options here are first or every time. So when you choose first time, it's not necessarily the very first time the order is saved, unless you add no other criteria in the if statement. It's the first time the order is saved and all of the criteria that you set up is met. And equally, to that point, every time the order is saved and the criteria is met. So you want to be very careful about how you're wording this and read it very thoroughly once you build it out. Do you really want this to fire? Absolutely. Every time the order is saved and a commitment document exists in the file. Probably not, because once it's there, it's always there. And every time you're saved, it's going to run. So that's just something to think about and definitely to test and put it through its paces. The other thing I wanted to talk about is if you fire this initially off of document is attached. Once you set up an automation process, the save of the file, once the criteria is met, is the trigger. So it will not fire until you save the file and the criteria is met. So when you're doing something off of document is attached or task is added or updated, I can't say updated today. Document is attached. Typically what we're going to do is we're going to look for a specific document to be attached. Because its document is attached and it requires the save of the order, if the document is attached and the document is not named properly or not named specifically what we tell it to look for and the file is saved, you can't just go and rename the document to what the automation is looking for and then resave the file because the document has no longer been attached and it won't fire. So that's just something we see commonly. So just things to think about. It's very literal, but the save is the trigger. So let's say we say order is saved, first time the order is saved, and we move on. So we know when to start the process and we say next. Now, in our if section, we then get to set up the conditions. So we have quite a few out of the box kind of options that will then walk us through the items that are available in our order. If you want to set this up to test it right off the bat, I like to start everything with, and the profile is under a specific profile. So you'll see it's starting to build my rule down here. And anytime I get a hyperlink, I'm just going to do it on my automation profile. But if you have a test and training profile, this is a good way to test it and put it through its paces before you move it up to your live profile. Because once you turn this on, it will fire against any file that is opened, a change is made, it meets the criteria, and it's saved after you've enacted or enabled, this automation, including closed files. If you don't put a criterion here that the order has to be in process or it has to have been opened after a certain date. So I like to kind of put it through test and training or a specific profile just to make sure it's not running on everything or something it shouldn't be. But you can drill it down by transaction type. Maybe I need it specifically on purchases. Maybe I need it on a specific order type or policy type or product type. And then you even have ways to drill it down farther to order has a specific contact or a document. So you can pull up a specific document, even though you started it with order is saved versus a document is attached. It's just, how do I want it to behave? So let's do order has a document. So I want to say, and the order has a document with the following criteria. And sometimes it will open you up new options. So now I'm going to do, and the document name contains, let's say, commitment. And anytime you're entering this, I can add it, and I can choose to say exact match, or I can say, you know what, any document that contains the word commitment. And then I OK. And so now it's building this down below. First time an order is saved, my profile, transaction type, and my document is named commitment. And maybe just very simply, I just want it to go update a task for me. So once I am done completing my if section, I'm just going to say next and go tell it what action to perform. So here my actions are a little bit limited. Most of this was built specifically around tasks, although I do have an option to add, update tasks, or apply a template, or perform a 360 transaction. And again, that is limited to certain 360 products. Or a little bit more advanced is everything else that I want to do, because we saw on that slide and we talked about automation can really do just about anything a user can do in an order outside of the register, but in an order. So just about everything else that you want it to do outside of these 4 options would use what we call a code snippet, which my team writes. It is custom coding. It is written in Python code. We do not teach Python code, but you can request that we contract to write the Python code for you, and we can always discuss your options. But that's where we kind of get outside of the wizard, and we can basically tell it to do anything we want in an order through custom Python code snippets. On this one, I'm going to make it very simple. I'm going to update a specific task. I'm going to say update my, now I can switch between my checklist requested tasks. I can look through my task codes. So this is specifically looking through my tasking lookup table so I can make sure I'm grabbing the correct task. Where's my prep commitment? There it is. And then I can tell it what to do with it. So I'm going to go ahead and update that to completed. And OK. And I can also tell it to add a task after that if I wanted to. Send out commitment or whatever I want it to do. And I can grab that from the task list, right? If I had it in here, which I don't know if I do, or I can just type it right in here, right? Deliver commitment. Oh, stop it. And then because I didn't have it in my lookup table, which usually I would, and I can say, you know what, assign that to the escrow officer. And I can give it a due date. And so it will actually, at the same time that it's completing this task, it's going to add a new task to then assign it to my escrow officer to move the file through its workflow. So once I'm finished with that, now I get a chance to give it a category if I want, just for sorting purposes on the back end here. Maybe that's a title. That's how I'm sorting it. I can name it complete, prepare, commitment. Whatever I want to name it, I can give it a further description. The naming and the description, the name has to be unique to any of the other processes here. And really, this is how you would want to be able to search it later when you need to come back and find it to make any tweaks that you need to make later. But it will not run until you actually physically enable it. So this enable button will allow you to run it. And then as soon as you say OK and close it, it will now run on any files, like I said, that are opened, a change is made and saved, and it meets all of this criteria. So for example, I didn't put any stop in here that said only files that are in progress. So if somebody opens a closed file and it has a commitment in it and it's a purchase and it's in this profile, and it has this task in it, it's going to update it and it's going to add a new task. So it's also a good idea to put a stop in here that says, and the order status is in process if you're using that status, or and the received date of the order is after, or, you know, is now or going forward. So put a start date in it. So that's just a good idea as well. This is my testing database, so I don't really need to do it. So I'm just going to say okay. And then testing for this would just be to go match the criteria in my order. So I can go to my order. I'm going to make sure I have my task in there. Prepare commitment is there. I'm going to go attach my document, which, look at me, I already had it in there. So here's commitment. I'm going to publish it. I'm not going to torture you guys with previewing my commitment. And I got a little pop-up. Of course, it popped on my other screen. Hold on. Oh, it's not going to do it. Hold on. All right, so what happens is, because automation is a user, so your user that triggered it is going to get a pop-up that says there's pending automation work for this file. It will continue once you close the order. So it can't run until I get out of the order. So now in this automation tab, they're going to see that it's waiting because we gave them permission to see the monitor. And it's going to say it can't acquire a lock on the file because I'm sitting in it. And it will literally wait here until I get out of this file. And if you look in the management console, right under process, this is under SP admin, the admins also have a monitor, same thing. Don't ignore my failures. And it's going to sit there in waiting, and it's going to show you, if I open this up, who triggered it, when they triggered it, how long it's been waiting. So how long this user sat. So I'm going to close the file. And we're going to give it a second and a chance to run. So we'll watch this for a second and I'll just refresh it in the interest of time. There, it's running. It's usually pretty quick. Okay, it's completed. So if I look at it again, it took less than 4 seconds to run. It was waiting for 1 minute and 25 seconds. And from here, I can open the file again. I can look at the process again. I can see every little step of the way of this process. So now if I open my file, and if I go back to my tasks, that task was completed and it shows me that automation completed it. And it added my new task. So that's kind of the basics of my automation wizard, the possibilities of automation. And like I said, and here's a couple of examples, automation can do anything. I mean, that's a very simple example of what it can do. Now, the other thing I wanted to show you over here, like these failures. So some of these failure messages are helpful and self-explanatory. So for example, this one, error updating task with name, order, full title. So it was trying to update this order full title search, but that task did not exist in the order, so the automation failed. So it can't update a task that's not in the order. Mine completed successfully because my task was already in the order. So that's kind of that's a very common one. The other one you see a lot is this one. The order has unresolved errors in the order. So that happens when the action that automation was trying to perform causes a warning, or I'm sorry, an error in the file. Just like a regular error you would get when you go to save your file and you get a pop-up error and it won't let you save and close your file, right? So automation can't fix that error for you. So it closes out and it fails the process. So the best troubleshooting for that is to go in and try to perform the action that automation was trying to do. To figure out where in the process you need to tweak it to make sure that it doesn't hit that error for automation. Some other example processes, for example, this one. And this one is one we've started putting in, and there are some, quite a few processes, like I said, that you can access, and I'll show you those in just a second. So this one, for example, if we'll open this one, add an HOA task for HOA contact. So every time the order is saved and the order has a contact where the contact type is HOA, the name is populated and updated, and then we have a code snippet. And that one real quick is just making sure it doesn't already have that contact. I'm not going to make you look at the coding. It's in a certain profile. Then what this is going to do, this special coding, because it's not one of our out-of-the-box options for action, is going to go add a separate task to order the HOA. And this description gives you a little more definition. So it's going to add you an order HOA with the corresponding number for the HOA contact for every HOA contact that's added to the order. We have several like those. We can also add notes that are alerts, you know, the pop-up notes when a file is canceled or when anything happens, actually. Adding an underwriter based on the settlement agent's preferences or any custom fields. Mark your order status as a certain status when something occurs in the order. Applying a certain, you know, sub-template maybe when it's a certain subdivision, that kind of thing. So those are just kind of samples. This is an example, excuse me, of, let's say, a report. So we start this one with when, so a specific time. So you can set this for a specific date and time. It's a very simple date and time option. And then this will actually open up and allow you to choose by profile your available reports. And this pulls up a list of all of your available reports in your system. So it's specific to you, and you can narrow them down by your report types. And then based on which report you choose, it will open up that report's specific parameters. In theory. And then it will actually ask you to name the report and give you a format for the report. So the, you know, depending on the report, if it'll allow you to export it to Excel or put Adobe. Oh no, I broke it. You'll get that option. Okay, so this is just what it looks like when you run the report. Although you might see a little bit of difference with the nuance with the dates, because it's not going to give you a date range. It's going to make you choose previous week. It doesn't let you choose specific dates. You're going to have to choose previous week, previous month, current month, etc., based on how the report is set up, but it will let you choose these parameters. Yes, please. And then you just do that, and then it will ask you where to save it, and it does give you the option to override the file or not. So if you don't override it when you put it in a specific location, it will just add, you know, the 1, the 2, etc. after it, because it's going to be the same name every time it drops it in, unless you remove it from that file however often you run it. And then 360 transactions. Let's open this one. So 360 transactions, just about any product can be the trigger to start a process. So you can say, you know, when a CPL transaction is updated and it's in a ready status, you could use that to update a task. You could use that to, you know, add a note to a file. But not all products are available for the action phase. So that's where it becomes a little different. And when you are dealing with 360 products, you get a little list with the dropdown of all of the products available. So when you get to the action phase, if they're not available, and you can't change it once you've set it up, but if they're not available in the list of the dropdown, they're not available. And then each one, when you get to the action phase, you will get the required options based on that provider. And some of them will require credentials, some of them will require additional settings depending on the provider itself. And this probably is the submit is probably a better option for that if you're using 360. So let me just show you this, for example. Yeah, so you'll see like on the submit, there's usually additional information that the provider requires before you can actually use 360 to submit a transaction. And there may be some information in there that you will need from the provider in order to complete this. Okay, so that's the 360 stuff. Now let me show you how you can get different examples and documentation from for automation, excuse me, from our site. So if you are not using F1 Help, it is a fantastic resource for you, literally from anywhere in SoftPro for any topic. You can simply hit F1 on your keyboard to access it, or this little question mark in the top right-hand corner. I happen to have opened it prematurely, and it will take you to F1. Now, if you hit it specifically from a certain area in the program, it should, I say should, take you directly to the support or help page for that topic. And there are several different items available to you specifically for automation. So there is a walkthrough here for the different pieces that we've talked to. There is a full, very lengthy user guide. There is also a page of little mini videos creating a new process, triggers, and it breaks down each piece of running a process and monitoring a process and looking through all of the SP admin pieces of those. And then my favorite part is the examples and downloads. This is available to everybody. So there are two different sections for the downloads and examples. There's a sample process page. So these are just basic order processes, and you can use any of these and download them and load them into your system. And then obviously you're going to tweak them to work for your needs, but then you can use them as jumping off points for something you might need them for. But any of these that you want, let's say it's, change the order status when an invoice is paid. If you click on it, it's going to show you a rundown of how it's set up. So, the invoice balance is updated, it's 0, it's a title only, and the order was created after 1/1/30. So I know that's a ridiculous date, it's in the future, but we do that on purpose. We purposely make these so that when you load it into your system, if you turn it on, it does not run without some sort of intervention from you. We want to make sure that you don't just load this and turn it on. You need to look at it, you need to make sure that you tweak it to suit your needs before you turn it on. But any one of these you can download. It's just going to download it to a zip file, and then you can import it into your Select. To do that in Select, in SP admin, once you've downloaded, you just hit import data here, and you just follow the wizard. So if you hit next and browse out to the location where you saved it, and I did this one earlier, this is just going to add a task. When another task is completed, we'll use that one. And you just follow it, just say next, next. Now, this is just going to ask you what you'd like to do when you import the process. If there's a conflict, and a conflict would be if you have another process that's named exactly the same as that process. That's basically the conflict. You can skip it, you can replace it, or you can fail this import. And then what status do you want it to be in when it imports? Typically, I leave it disabled. And then next and next. And once it's finished, now if you're sitting on the process page, you do have to refresh it to see it. And then I need to figure out, where is it? Let's do it. Let's resort by last modified. Here it is. Add another task when task is updated. So it's just this import data, and now here it is. But in order to make this work, I do have to open it up, and I'm going to have to tweak this, right? Maybe my task is not named schedule closing. Maybe I need to tweak the task names a little bit. I definitely need to change this order created date. I need to strip this out completely, or I need to change this to say, you know what, I want this to run as of today on only orders that were created as of today going forward, greater than or equal to today, before I enable it. So we do make every F1 process so that it will not run the second you turn it on. You have to touch it before you turn it on. Okay, so back to F1. These are sort of the order-based examples. So we have a template one, we have several template ones, we have some invoice, some advanced ones that have some code snippets in them. And you are welcome to take any of these and use and import them and use them sort of as the jumping off point to build out your own or play with them and test your own. And then the other examples and download page is the 360 processes. So on the 360 process downloads, there is actually a page up here that says 360 products that support automation. We are working on an update on this, so watch for that. This is mostly up to date. If you're not sure or really want to see, if you go actually into the process wizard and get to the action phase and hit 360, anything that's in that list you can use. But this will tell you the service and whether you can accept or submit in the actions. Because remember, almost any 360 product can be used as the jumping off point to start a process. So I can use that as the trigger to add a task or add a note or a contact or whatever I want to do. But not all of them can be part of the action phase of a process.
Hey, Brandy.
But this, yeah.
Hey, we had a question come in over something you were going over, so I thought I would just ask. And it's someone wanting to know if they are able to manually add their own additional statuses to the dropdown, something like earnest money, deposit pending, escrow instructions pending, so on and so forth.
To the, if I'm following that question correctly, do we mean to the process wizard?
It says are they allowed to add additional statuses to the drop-down menu? So probably,
Yeah.
like where they would track earnest money pending, escrow instructions pending. In the status screen and in admin.
Not sure I'm following. So if we're talking about in the conditions screen, that would require a code snippet. If you're talking about in the tasks, that's a lookup table.
They clarified it's the status screen and in admin instead of just in process, closed, and canceled.
Oh, that's okay. That's outside of automation. That's not an automation. If we're talking about here, that's not an automation question. But no, that dropdown is not editable.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So yeah, so this on 360, the 360 process downloads has a list of all the ones that are available that is currently in revision. We have some things to add, but they're all are also processes, sample processes for all of the ones that are currently on that list and available that you can download as well. Okay, that's all I have for you. Are there any other questions?
Let's see if I had any other ones come in. I don't think that I did, but let me double check. Sorry. Someone asked if the tasks are editable.
Yes, so tasks are just a lookup table in SP admin. So anybody that has permission to edit tasks in your lookup table can update those. Or you can just manually add and edit tasks directly from your tasking screen. You add a task and you can type it. Or if you have access to your lookup table, this is editable with permission.
Okay. And then it also, so I'm sorry, just to clarify, are the task status editable to add additional statuses?
No.
No. Okay, so that kind of goes back to the other one, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, well, that was a lot of great information, so thank you so much. We appreciate your time, and for all of those that joined us, we definitely appreciate your time as well. Feel free to reach out if you have any further other questions, or go ahead and type it in now, and I'll just make sure that before we sign off, we try and answer everything. But just as a recap, remember we will be sending out a link to this session so that you can watch it or use it for training. If you have any further questions, like I mentioned, feel free to reach out offline. You can absolutely email me or you can email Brandy, and we will get you squared away. So with that, I think that we do have one other question that came in, and it's when the blue box appears, is there a way for it to tell the user what automation is actually occurring?
So the one that says an automation is pending, it does not, but if they click on the automation tab in their order, right here, it will list out and they'll be able to see it's in a waiting status.
Okay.
So like if I can restart this one real quick. So that little, it just says there is a pending, but what they'll see here in automation is just that it's going to be in a waiting status if we give it a second.
Okay. And then we do have, well, first of all, someone said that this was awesome, so kudos to you, Brandy. And then we
Thanks.
have another question, and I personally am not 100% sure if this is tied to automation, but maybe it's trying to automatically save something. So someone says they're trying to get a weekly order report to save on their desktop, but it keeps failing. So I'm not 100% sure, and Brandy, you might know if that's something that they automatically are having set through automation to run and save. Or if it's just they're having issues saving. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, we might need to see the error. If it's an automation that's set up, we would probably need to save. It might be an issue that automation doesn't have access to save to your desktop. So it might be an IT thing, but we would need to see the error. So if they
Okay,
want to
she did
reach out to
clarify
me,
that
I could look at it.
it is in automation. So
Okay. So we would need to
I'm
take
just
a look
gonna,
at that specifically.
yeah, I was just gonna say it's for Melinda. So Melinda, if you can hear me, we will reach out to you directly to try and get that error message and help you get that fixed. Okay, I think that's it for now. I really appreciate you, Brandy, for doing this. And again, reminder, we will send out a link and we will happily answer questions that might pop up when you watch those. Just reach out. And with that, we're going to give the rest of your day back to you and stay tuned for our next Save You a Seat webinar.